Very much looking forward. Now, Beatie, I'm guessing how many interviews, conversations have started? Well, tell us what makes Beatie run, right? I'm sure that's
People always ask me, so how did you get started running? And I think my kids have heard this question so many times that they feel like they could just say it themselves. Um, but actually, you asked it a little differently. You said, what makes Beatie run? So
well, we'll get to that more specific. Yeah, but I do want to start with a little bit of your background. I'll just point out, by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't. Well, I just found out recently, actually, not that Beatie is the great granddaughter of a wonderful rabbi in the States called Rabbi Shubo, who's really one of the leading rabbis in America. And I think what stands out with him, among many of his incredible accomplishments, including being a great big Zionist when it wasn't always so popular among everybody years ago. He was also very close with Rav Soloveitchik, with the Rav. They had a very special relationship. I think that tells you something. Anybody who is close with Rav Soloveitchik, who was one of the great intellects of the world. So Beatie comes from really a tremendous yichus, I would say, in terms of that. So if you could just follow up after that and tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and just life in general.
Sure. Yes, I was not zocha to ever meet my great grandfather. My mother was actually pretty young when he passed away, but I did grow up always hearing about his legend, and I wrote a report about him a few times, and I only heard amazing stories. And we were very close with the Boston Rebbe because of him. We used to go visit him, and he definitely was a trailblazer. And I think a lot of time I feel like my parents really gave over to us as kids that, like, whatever you're passionate about, you could pursue. You don't have to be boxed into a certain one path. I never in my life imagined I'd be a professional athlete as a Orthodox mother of 5. It wasn't something I was thinking about then, but I always knew that I could do whatever I wanted, and I was never scared to stand out, and I never was really into conforming to the norms. That didn't scare me. So I think I got that from my great grandfather and from my parents. And I grew up in the States. I spent most of my life in Passaic, New Jersey, and I went to Manhattan High School for girls. And when I came to Israel for seminary, I actually went to BJJ, one of the most Beis Yaakov seminaries there is. And I knew I wanted to stay in Israel. Like, I pretty much told my mother, like, I'm moving, even though I wasn't making Aliyah. But the year after seminary, actually, I stayed another year. I was a dorm counselor, a madricha in another seminary. And hi again. I was able to unmute. The year after I came to seminary, I was set up with my husband in Israel by my madricha, her brother. It was her brother, and we dated in Israel. And we're actually about to celebrate our 12-year anniversary. We got married right before Pesach, and we were pretty committed to staying here, So I've been here. We've been here since, except for 2 years where we lived in Tucson, Arizona, and I worked on a college campus with college students to, help them connect with their Judaism. We served Shabbat meals, holiday meals, the entire, every Shabbos, and I learned with students on campus. And then we came back to Israel after those 2 years in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay, great. So the truth is, it's actually very appropriate that we're having you now. In fact, we probably should have had you a year ago. I think hopefully everybody here has been healthy through the whole pandemic, and your families have been well. So I think for a lot of us, the biggest challenge has been staying in shape. So hopefully you can inspire us, not just with your whole story, but also inspire us to run, to get into better shape. So if you can now, after you mentioned, it's not exactly the regular track going from Manhattan High School for girls, which is a great high school, I know well, and BJJ, to go on to become what you are. And in fact, I think 3 weeks ago, we actually interviewed Nama Shafir, who you may have heard of, who is an Israeli professional basketball star. I think now between you and her, we've pretty much covered the roster of observant professional athletes in the world, and maybe in history. If anybody knows of anybody else, you can correct me. So I think it's pretty amazing. Obviously, it's not a typical path. So if you can kind of tell us how it, as you said, your kids know the story, but we want to know the story of how you went, I guess, from Mrs. Beatie to Speedy Beatie, as they call you.
The funny thing is that Speedy Beatie is actually not a new nickname. Like when I was growing up, I wasn't, I didn't grow up with a lot of formal sports options, but I loved like playing ball. So whenever I'd play any kind of ball game, I'd always be running after the ball. And my friends used to call me Speedy Beatie. Like I was known for being fast. Just I never thought it would actually, turn into anything real. The truth is, I didn't exercise at all for 6 years. I had 4 kids during those 6 years, and I was so busy. And honestly, now looking back, I really have no idea how I went that long without taking care of myself. But at the time, it seemed impossible. I was working. I was always either pregnant or nursing. And I really put myself at the bottom of the list. And to the point that like when my family used to have little like races on the beach, and it was Chol Moed Pesach, I remember, and we had a just like 100-meter sprint, and I came in like last, and I was just like huffing and puffing. I couldn't breathe after just running 100 meters. And it never feels good to feel, I like felt so out of shape. I felt like I had completely lost myself in that moment. And I said like, I need to do something about it. Now, of course, I didn't do anything. That was Pesach. I didn't actually do anything for another like 5 months, but I basically, at the end of that summer, I said to my husband, that's it. I am going to run a marathon. And if people always laugh when I say that, because it's kind of extreme to go from not exercising at all to running a marathon. But I would say that what I knew about myself, the biggest thing I wanted at the time was to exercise consistently. I wanted to be able to say, I get out the door and I run 4 times a week. And I was struggling so hard to motivate myself. Like nothing was working. They say, oh, if you sign up for the gym, you pay money, like you'll be motivated. Well, I signed up for online programs. I wasn't sticking with it. And at the time, running was just like, I knew, if I pick any other distance, even a 5K, a 10K, even a half marathon, I could have showed up and winged it because I'm naturally athletic. I can run. But I knew that no one shows up at the start line of a marathon without training. And signing up for a marathon was going to obligate me to get out the door and run. So that's why I chose the goal. And when I talk about choosing goals, I always say, pick something that's going to stretch you. Now, for some people, a marathon's way too big for where they are. But it's okay to choose it's not okay, it's recommended to choose a goal that is farther than where you are right now. You want a goal that pushes you out of your comfort zone, because the only way you change is by, getting past where you currently are. And the goal that stretches you is what motivates you to make those changes.
Yeah, okay. If you could speak a little bit about, you obviously come from a strongly religious background. When you run, do you feel your spiritual, your religious parts of you, are they attuned? Are they heightened? If you can speak about running and perhaps as a spiritual or again, religious aspect. For some people, it is a religion. I mean, I used to run a lot more, and I used to run also like, where it was right after Shabbos, you had to go, and it could be like a little bit of a religion, but obviously we want it to be part of the Jewish religion. So if you could, how do you feel when you're running in terms of just connecting to your spiritual, religious aspects?
Yeah, so I've definitely seen how people make running into a religion. And I think that what I view it as, for me, running is an incredible tool for self-growth and for working on ourselves. But I also view it as just an opportunity to disconnect from the hustle and bustle of life and be present with ourselves. And I think when you do that, when you create space to be fully present with yourself, that automatically like can become a spiritual experience where you're connecting with your most like authentic self, your neshama, your soul. You can have opportunity to talk to Hashem. You can have an opportunity to take in the world and appreciate the beauty of the world, which I think inherently leads you to just like feel this overwhelming sense of gratitude and recognition of our creator. Like even if you don't go out running with the intention to be spiritual, I think it's almost hard not to have those moments of deep connection that don't come when you're so plugged, when we're so like busy with life. And so much of our day is spent, especially these days, on screens and electronically, and almost like shutting down a certain part of ourselves. So I love that running gave me this opportunity to connect in a very deep way to myself and to my creator. And to this day, I really enjoy I run a lot, right? I'm running like 100 miles a week or 160 kilometers a week. So that's a lot of time. I spend a lot of time not listening to anything, spend a lot of time just quiet. And I really found also that as a mother, I needed that so badly. Like, I think even more, I came to running because I wanted to get in shape physically, but like it was the greatest mental release for me. And it changed me as a spouse and as a mom. I had so much more patience for my kids when I would get out for a run, because suddenly I was just like releasing a lot of pent up tension that happens when you're like with your kids all day. I had really little kids, and it was like, wow, I didn't even know how, like I needed to take care of myself this way, which is something I'm also really passionate about. But yeah, that's a long answer to your question.
We'll go back to a couple of things. You said a lot of, I think, very important things, but in terms of the spiritual religious part, do you feel different running in Jerusalem? You have a tremendous merit to be able to run in Yerushalayim. So that's the first part. And what are your favorite runs in Jerusalem? Do you get to the old city? Are there special places? Because you can run a lot. You can really see all of Yerushalayim.
Yeah. Well, I lived in Yerushalayim for 5 years, and we don't live in Yerushalayim anymore.
Okay, I thought
so. When I was moving from Yerushalayim, I was actually really sad because I always felt so connected. I lived in Har Nof, and a lot of mornings I would go from Har Nof down to the old city, and I would just run along the light rail line, and I watched the sun come up over Yerushalayim. And it always felt so, yeah, I definitely connected in a very strong way to like the holiness of Yerushalayim. And I was sad to leave that. But and those were some of my favorite runs. But the truth is that I moved to a moshav near Ramat Beit Shemesh. It's in the Ema Ka'ala area, the Allah Valley, and it's really gorgeous here. And we have a ton of beautiful trails, and I spend a lot of time in nature, much more than I did before, and that's really powerful for me. Like I listen to a lot of shiurim, and I remember listening to something my Rabbi Kellerman said. He talked, and I can't remember the exact quote, but I was learning from one of Rav Volby, Ali Shor, one of his svarim, and he was talking about how the way we develop like emunah in Hashem, the way we really strengthen our connection with Hashem is through like watching the sunrise every morning, watching the sunset. Like when you experience these parts of nature, that there's something so powerful about it, just to really experience it. And you'd think I'd get bored. I go every day the same trails. I don't get bored. It's like my soul like soaks it in. I just need that. I need to see, I watch the seasons. I watch the it changed colors. Now we're in the most beautiful time of year. It's all green. I see the flowers, and I see the corn growing. And I could watch plants grow, like, and I can just say, wow, thank you, Hashem, for like the food we eat every day. I'm watching it happen. To me, that's incredibly powerful. So it might not be the holy city of Yerushalayim, but I'm very, very blessed to just like surround myself with the like Marabu Masech Hashem, the beautiful world that He created for us.
You know, with 5 kids and running 100 miles a week, it sounds like you need a good husband that and a good schedule. If you can just tell us, it sounds like you're going early in the morning before the kids are up. Like how do you balance your being that mother of 5 kids, and it's and the hours and hours that you run? It's not easy.
Well, I would say that it's gotten a lot easier now because my job is like to be a professional athlete. So I don't have to do so much during the day except train, recover, and take care of my family. There was like a time where I was working full time in a very demanding job, and training pretty seriously and still had 5 kids. And I don't even know how I did it. But one thing I do say is that if you want something badly enough, you'll always find a way. It's just a matter of prioritizing. So when my goal was to train well for that marathon, I just made sure like my schedule was very tight. I didn't have a lot of downtime, but I really enjoyed it. Like my running was my outlet and I got a lot of pleasure from it. Now, there are some days where I get up at 5:30 and I drive to Yerushalayim to train with my group in Yerushalayim, and my husband does morning duty with my kids. There are some days where I'm home in the morning and I run after I drop my kids off at school. In the summer, it's harder because it's so hot here. You have to get up really early. But overall, I would say that I'm very blessed to have a schedule that's pretty flexible as an athlete, and it works pretty well with being a mom. I definitely have a disadvantage compared to other athletes because I don't have nearly as much time to like recover and all the downtime that they have. But I think that being an athlete is easier than some other jobs when you're juggling your schedule with your kids. Like I have more flexibility than if I'd work in an office. So I'm grateful for that.
Do your kids run with you ever? Can any of them keep up with you a little bit?
A lot of times I do I'll do like a second run in the afternoon and I take my kids on their bikes and I sometimes push my daughter in the stroller, or I'll do like a few kilometers with my kids, bring them home and then do the rest myself. I definitely try and get that. They enjoy it. We have really nice places to run and like, I think exercise is beneficial for everyone. So we try and make that a family activity.
Okay, so we'll look forward to the next generation, perhaps, of Olympians, maybe.
My kids all say they're not going to run like me. They explicitly tell me they don't want to be runners, and I've thought about it recently. I've been thinking about it a lot because, like, one of my friends was talking about how she's also an inspiration. She's training to be on the American Ninja Warrior, and she was talking about how her daughter wants to do everything she's doing. And I was thinking, does it make my kids really don't? And I think as parents, our job is to create the space for our kids to pursue whatever they want to do. And I think that, we could balance both, like by being passionate, like I remember now, my mom was she was home with us for 7 years, but then she went back to work and she wrote a book about getting back into the workforce after taking off time to raise kids. And she did conferences and she was very passionate about it. And I used to I almost like laughed about what she was doing because she was so into it. And I thought, I'm never going to do anything like that. And the thing is, I went my own path, but I learned a lot from my mother that she took her passion and she was able to give back to the world with it. And I'm doing the same thing in my own way. So ultimately, I think, we want to foster that within our kids and create the space for them to pursue whatever they love.
Sounds like rabbis' kids always say, we're never going to be a rabbi. And a lot of them, like myself.
Yes, my husband said that also. And then we did outreach in Arizona. So there you go.
So yeah, your kids will be running rabbis and rebbitzins and who knows what. Yeah, okay. When we spoke to Nama Shafir a few weeks ago, so she mentioned that when she first started becoming well-known, she got some pushback from the religious community. How can you do this basketball? I'm wondering if there has been criticism and pushback for what you do, which is not, again, the most traditional of in the religious world, and if you have, how you've dealt with that.
Yeah. So it really depends on the community you're in. For the most part, I really get a lot of positive feedback, and everyone's very complimentary and telling me. But I did live in a very orthodox, like Haredi community, like ultra Orthodox, and I think so my kids' schools were not very fond of the fact that I was running publicly. I have to say, I don't like to share this because I don't like to bring negative talk, but I think that what I realized is that whenever you're paving a path, whenever you're doing something new, you're always going to potentially get some criticism from it because it takes time for people to understand and recognize that yes, this is possible. And I continued to to pursue this path because I had support from my rabbis and mentors who really encouraged me. And these are people that I know and trust. And I recommend that if you're, when you have questions that come up, to discuss it with your own personal mentors and rabbis and rebbitzins who can guide you, not to make decisions on your own. But even if there are people that, give you a hard time or say, oh, what you're doing is crazy, that doesn't mean that you need to stop doing it. It just means there may be people that don't yet recognize that what you're doing is important. And whenever you're trying to make change in a certain way, I think that we can. And for me, I've always been, I've never shared, I really try not to say any of the negative things that I ever did here. It's not a lot, but if I ever, I got called to my daughter's principal's office because she was like, how could you run a race? Like she was very upset. And my friends were like, well, come tell the principal that you made such a kiddush Hashem. Like, there's no reason she should be doing this. And I said, no, it's fine. She doesn't really understand. And I never speak about that, because my goal is to do what I'm doing. I think you can make change through being a positive, like through positivity, and not by talking about all the negative things that are happening in the world, like in the world, by you being the source of change. You be the light, you show what you think needs to happen. That's the way we make change. So I've just continued to, pursue my path with the support of my rabbis and mentors, and share positively, and hopefully, and I've seen an incredible number of religious women get involved in sport. The messages that I share are, one, that mothers need to take care of themselves. Like, we need to make time for ourselves. We need to get out and exercise. It's really healthy. Religious women, it's great to exercise. There's value in sport. It's going to help us as human beings. And there's ways to pursue sport that are completely, within the realm of halacha, of Jewish law, and you can, pursue big goals at the highest level without compromising on your religious values. And so those are the messages that I share. And I think in that way, hopefully I'm going to, make a change in our community.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why I asked you, because I think you are such a great role model, and some people might be, pushed askance if somebody is, a few people say this. I think it's very important to hear from someone like you that even though there are some people who might be critical, etc., that you've got your path, you're doing it halachically, and you know what you're doing, and like you said, you're making a tremendous kiddush Hashem and inspiring people really all over the world. So I think that's really incredible. That, I sent you, I don't know if you got a chance to look at it, I sent you today a link to an article from a number of former athletes who talked about how the importance of sports, and they wrote the article so that Israel should invest more in sports. So if you can maybe speak a little bit about the lessons that you've spoken about already, but some of the other life lessons that you've learned, discipline, perseverance, etc., from your running that we can all gain from, and how it's made you.
I started to skim that article. There was one thing that stood out for me, because I literally just wrote a post about it. He was talking about, that when the journey gets tough, it doesn't mean that you quit. Like, sometimes you might need to stop what you're doing for reasons, but just because something gets hard, that doesn't mean that you should stop. You should, stop trying. And I think, there are so many lessons that I've learned in terms of mindset and to tapping into my mental strength from running. But that was something that just came up for me because I just ran a race this Sunday, and it was actually like, there's very few racing opportunities because of Corona. So Israel created this very special race for just the elite athletes. It was a marathon, and I was the only one running a half marathon, and it was on a very flat course, and it was great weather, and I had 2 pacers to run with, and I had a great training block, and I was really all set to I wanted to run a 1:13:30 or under 1:14 in the half marathon. And, my coach and I felt I was capable of doing it. And it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So I thought, all the good vibes, it's going to be great. And the truth is, the race was really hard. Like, the entire time, even though my legs felt good, I was struggling mentally to get in the zone, and I had to work through so many parts of me that kept saying, oh, you're not going to make it. You might as well quit now. Or, oh, this pace is too hot for the beginning. This is feels too hard for the beginning of a race. How are you going to be able to do it? All the self-doubt. And at the end of the day, I didn't run a 1:13:30. I ran a 1:14:31. So I ran a minute slower than my time. And I was really, which is a good time, but I was
For
feeling
most
so
of us, that's
no, people don't really understand when you complain about when you're like disappointed.
I'm not. No, I
You know,
understand. I'm just
a
saying
minute
it's
faster.
it's
But the thing
amazing.
is, I think what was hard was like how much I thought that it was going to be smooth and how well prepared I was and how I felt like this was going to be my day. And it was so hard. And my biggest takeaway was just because also I'm going, really, it's a stop on the way. In 6 weeks, I'm supposed to be running a full marathon in England, God willing. And the goal is to hit the qualifying standard of the Olympics, which is 2:29:30. It's a really intense, it's a hard time. Like for me to do it, it's going to take everything I have on that day. And I wanted to run that time because I wanted to know that I'd be okay running it. A 1:14:30 means I need to run basically double the distance and only take 1 second slower per kilometer. Okay, that's nothing. So in my mind, it seems crazy, and it almost feels like insurmountable. Like, how am I going to be able to do this? And we all encounter in our lives times where the things we're pursuing and what we're trying to, achieve seems so hard, and we doubt ourselves, and we face anxiety and worry, and we wonder whether we're going to be able to make it. And what I've learned from running time and time again is that if you don't believe in yourself and you don't commit fully to it and you don't go in fearlessly and give it your all, then you won't make it. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to make it. There are definitely going to be hard times and failures along the way. But when things get difficult and when it's tough, and my race was really hard, that doesn't mean I should give up now. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to get my goal. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't continue trying. That doesn't mean that I am a failure. It means that that's part of the journey, and that every time you go through those obstacles, you ultimately become stronger. So I reminded myself of that. And that was my biggest takeaway, that even when the journey is difficult, that doesn't mean we give up. It means we keep going. And I think that's relevant for all of us in life. And I need that reminder all the time, as a parent, every day. I think the biggest thing for me is like when I go through a difficult workout and I've seen how I fight through so much. I have mental battles with every workout. It's exhausting. But then when my kids are all, whining, and I really just want to lose my patience and tell everyone to get in bed this second, I can remind myself, no, I was strong and tough in that workout, and I'm going to be, strong and tough right now, and hold back and be patient. So I think by far the gift of running is so much more than physical. It's the mental strength you gain from, pushing through your limits, overcoming mental barriers, and also just and learning to and recognizing that we have so much more strength within us than we even realize. I've seen that time and again as well.
Yeah, that's a very powerful message. First of all, somebody asked about the article. It's in it's the Israeli business paper, which is called Kalkalist or CTEC. If you have a problem finding it, we can send us an email. We'll send it to you. And if anybody has any other questions, put them in the chat box and we'll try to ask them. You mentioned the Olympics, and you were in the news last year when they were supposed to be in the Olympics, because the original Olympics in 2020 had scheduled the women's marathon on Shabbos. And you asked them to change and they said no. And then, of course, it became a moot point. And if you can just tell us a little bit about what's going on now, because I think as of now, it's also still scheduled for Shabbos. And if you can tell us a little bit about who you've been speaking with, if you have a lawyer involved, if any progress, and the Israeli Olympic team is helping you, is standing behind you, and etc.
So the marathon is typically always scheduled for Sunday. It was scheduled for a Sunday originally as well. Then they moved all the outdoor distance events to an island not very close to Tokyo called Sapporo. And when they did that, somehow the women's marathon got scheduled on Shabbos. Now, this is not the first. I actually had to miss out on the World Championships in 2019 in Doha because the women's marathon was Friday night. And it was strange. I was like, why the one event of all fell on Shabbos? I was a little bit disappointed, but I figured, okay, I have the Olympics. Then it was like, once again, the one event I'm training for comes out on Shabbos. And any marathon in the world, always on a Sunday. Every other Olympic year, it's always on a Sunday. So I was disappointed, but I thought, I'm going to try and see, maybe be optimistic. Maybe there's a way to change it. Then with Corona, the whole Olympics were canceled. So immediately I thought, okay, they're rescheduling everything. So maybe I can put in a request that they'll reschedule this women's marathon. It's not a big deal. I actually sent an email I found out who the technical delegate was in charge of scheduling the track and field events. And I emailed her a very nice long email explaining my situation. And she wrote back that they can't take any religious requests into accommodation. They're very sorry, but that's just their policy. And I sort of could understand, just because, you have 3 religions with 3 Shabbats on 3 different days. So if I say I want the race on Sunday, what if someone else comes and wants the race on Friday? They can't race on Friday.
Chariots of fire.
But at the same time, I also felt like, we're living in 2020. We're in it like we're recognizing so much of like tolerant in all different areas, and we're trying to be as accommodating as possible for so many different things. It wouldn't be that hard to accommodate me. And sure, if it comes up again, if there's any other athlete that needed it, so they could figure out and they see if there's nothing else, no other reason why they need to schedule it. This is an event where there's actually no tickets sold, right? No one's, it's not like where they, and I was asking, they could easily switch it with the women's race walk. So if there's no other reason why they couldn't, why shouldn't they really be able to accommodate me? But they said no. Then I figured, I need to like try and qualify and maybe re-request. Like I had some contacts with someone who had a lot of connections in Japan. We had different ideas. I was approached by a lawyer who felt like it was really a case, because he said that in 2012 Olympics, when it coincided with Ramadan, so they actually made a committee to try and help the Muslim athletes, make it easier on them, because a lot of them are fasting. Now, they didn't switch the dates of the whole Olympics, but they did acknowledge that there was a religious issue here and try to accommodate them. So clearly they have made accommodations for religion before. So the lawyer wrote a very detailed letter that was very, very, and I was actually very hesitant when the lawyer approached me. I said, I didn't want to be, that Jew just asking for accommodation or whatever. It was like almost, I was a little bit sensitive about it. I felt uncomfortable because I live in Israel, so I can always hear the people saying like, oh, how religious are you? Why can't you run on Shabbat? Why you have to be that annoying person doing these things? But then I thought about it more, and I felt like, even if I don't, even if the answer is no, I want to use my voice to empower other, young religious athletes, lawyers, whatever it is, whatever field it is, not to be embarrassed about keeping Shabbat, and about, if they have to speak up and say, listen, I can't make it because I am a Shabbat observant Jew, or could you possibly switch around the date because of that? Like, so by using my voice, I have an opportunity to, show people that this is something you could do comfortably. And so I said with a lawyer, yes, I'll write the letter. I'll go public with it. I'll put it out there. And actually, Charlie Harari encouraged me really, because he told me, he said when he started at his law firm, he remembered being really hesitant to tell his colleagues that he would have to leave early on Friday. And when he worked up the courage to do it, they were like, oh, sure, Deborah does that every single week. No big deal. And, she was a lawyer there 10 years before him, and she was such a great lawyer, and she left every Friday, and they got used to it. So she set an example. And so I felt like I had an opportunity to potentially, help others. And we wrote a really nice letter. We did not get a positive answer. They said no again. At this point, because everything, I was qualified according to a ranking system, but then I haven't run a marathon since 2020. So I moved down again in the ranking. I need to run again. I'm trying to qualify by the guaranteed standard time, and then potentially reappeal, and just see, like they've changed events before for certain athletes even. So maybe they will. I don't know. Probably unlikely, but I'm not giving up quite yet. And, to me, it's very possible that Hashem sent me all the way here just to say that there's nothing more important to me in the world than keeping Shabbat, even competing in the Olympics. And I will gladly do that and, give up on this opportunity. I'm happy with that as well.
Okay, so just this sounds like that Israel should be involved in on a governmental level. Have you had any discussions with the Israeli Olympic Committee?
So let's go to the Israeli Olympic Committee. Yes, you mentioned that.
Okay.
So it's interesting because the Israeli Olympic Committee has an actual rule that athletes are not allowed to compete on Yom Kippur. So they do recognize some standard of religion. But when it comes to Shabbos, they don't feel like they didn't feel like they could stand behind me on it. They don't obligate their athletes. Any athletes can compete and participate in events on Shabbat. And to them, they view me as like, how religious are you? Why can't you run on Shabbat? Like, why are you doing this again? What's wrong with it? And like, you don't have to be that religious. So, and they feel like advocating has never been very helpful in the past because there were certain events that were on Yom Kippur. They tried to switch. They never got a positive answer. So they haven't been very helpful in trying to help me. I've spoken to several people. Maybe I need to try a little bit harder. It's a sticky issue. I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to wait till I was really qualified to bring it up again. But actually, when I posted my letter, part of my letter, and I got very positive response from some athletes in America, Olympians like Christian Taylor, who is a world record long jump, triple jumper. He was very supportive, and he started something called the Athlete Association, where he tries to advocate on behalf of different athlete needs. He said he would try and help. And Lauren Fleshman, she commented also. So I'm going to see, maybe I can, get some support from other big Olympians that might make a difference as well. And I will try and reapproach the Israeli Olympic Committee. But also there's we have an athlete from Kenya, another female.
Peter, right?
What? Yeah, Lona Chemtai, and she is number 2 in the world. And so they pretty much, she's trying to medal in Tokyo. So I feel like they think, oh, we have her, so we don't need to worry. I'm not trying to say anything negative, but that might be part of the issue.
Okay, we'll follow up on that. All right, we have a few questions actually from some of the audience here. Let me just take a look. Yeah, so first of all, just to mention that what an inspiration you are for somebody just who runs, and such an inspiration, as I think we all agree on that, and for thousands and thousands of people. Then the question was just about the Olympics. Is this the IOC or this the local Olympic organizing committee that sets this up? And then the question of whether you have any other goals on the horizon besides the Olympics.
The technical delegate is from the IOC, not from Tokyo. In general, Tokyo and the Japanese organizers don't have so much involvement in the details of the Olympics. So even though I had some connections, there's someone in Israel I'm very close with who is very connected in Japan. He knows the woman who's in charge of the whole Olympic event. She was the Minister of Empowerment and Sport. She was the former Prime Minister. He thought she might be able to help, but really they don't have so much control. It's the IOC that makes the decisions here. In terms of other goals on the horizon, I'm always trying to improve in my marathon time. Right now, I'm really focused on running this next marathon. You have to be laser focused on the goal, the short-term goals, whatever you're trying to achieve right now. So that's my upcoming goal, and that's what I'm giving my all to right now. Beyond that, if I can't run in the Olympics, I'm going to hopefully run. There's all the world marathon majors are all scheduled for the fall. So I'm going to try and run in one of those and do well and, improve my time. And then I hope to participate. I hope to be at the World Championships in 2022 for Israel. And I don't even know where. I like to keep things open because there's so much I've learned on my journey that like the sky is the limit. You don't really know. Like don't limit your potential. We'll see where this takes me.
Okay, and another question was about, I think recently you went professional. If you can just discuss what that means in terms of sponsorships or now and any, okay, how does you mentioned you are now a full athlete. Does the IOC give a stipend, and does it give a stipend based on your eliteness, etc.? If you can talk about that.
Yeah, being a professional athlete in Israel is different from the States. Like we don't have shoe companies signing us contracts here. It would be nice if that was the case. We do get support from Israel. So when I ran in 2019, when I won the national championship, I ran a 2:42. That qualified me to like the lowest status of Olympic candidate, but I meant I would get a monthly stipend from Israeli Olympic Committee. They cover all my travel expenses when I go for races. They'll cover any training expenses. And then I since went up another level of a tier of sponsorship. So they sponsor me a monthly stipend and training expenses. And there's one other organization that they sponsor me because they want to help religious athletes. So between those two organizations, that's I guess my level of funding. And yeah, I do speaking engagements to also support my family.
Okay.
I was I get approached by different companies sometimes, but I don't have any real sponsorships with any big companies right now. It'd be nice. I'm working on
Well,
it.
we'll have to speak to Sylvan Adams.
Yeah, Sylvan Adams, he has created like a center to help athletes improve their performance, but I don't think he's very focused on like actually sponsoring individual athletes right now. But
If you
maybe
get into a triathlon, he likes cycling, so maybe.
I want to do triathlon in 2024 potentially. I do a lot of cycling and swimming on the side for my cross training.
You heard it here first. Okay, we're looking forward to that also. All right, we'll take a couple more questions because you're a busy person, and I didn't read. You're running. You're saying in how long in London? In 6 weeks?
It's less than 6 weeks now. It's 5.5 weeks. Wow. April 25th. You should all pray for me to qualify with a 2:29:30. And that the race goes on and I don't have to quarantine 10 days to participate. Lots of things.
So you mentioned Christian Taylor, some other athletes. I actually want though to have other athletes over the years talk to you, spoken to you about religion, about Judaism, about other Jews maybe who haven't been so formal, publicly Jewish, come up to you and asked you and given, etc. Wanted some support for being Jewish or even though.
I definitely get messages all the time from young, not professional athletes, but young runners and young athletes and lots of Shomer Shabbat Jews who are into sport and either telling me that I've inspired them or girls who've told me that they used to be embarrassed to wear skirts when they run, but now it's cool. So I definitely am connected. In Israel, it's amazing. We have a large community of Ethiopian runners. The top guys are all Ethiopians. And actually, just at the race that I was on Sunday, one of the the runner who came in third place in his very first marathon, he's 23, he ran a 2:07. He is Shomer Shabbat also. I forgot my siddur, so he gave me a siddur over Shabbos, and it was amazing. My husband was handing out bottles on the course. Every time he took a bottle, he said todah to my husband while he was running an all-out race effort. So yeah, it was very sweet to connect with him, and there's definitely a few other Shomer Shabbat athletes in Israel.
Okay, we could go on and on and on, but we'll sum up now. If there are any, we've really, again, somebody who's loves sports and has always felt that there is room for sports within religion, not just room, that it's really part of religion, that it's a religious aspect and that it can make us more religious and better people. You're definitely an inspiration to me and really for, as we've seen, for thousands and thousands of people. If there are any last messages in terms of, as a role model, even just the fact that, how does it feel to know that there are so many people who who look up to you, how do you deal with that? And then again, any last messages that of inspiration that you want to leave us with?
Most of the time, I really feel like I just want everyone to know that like I'm a normal person, just like you, trying to get the best out of myself in this world. I think we're all here trying, and I think like hopefully we all are tuned into that mission of like trying to become the best version of ourselves. And I like to keep it really real. And I share that the difficult times, the good times, the bad, everything, all parts of my journey. I really just, you said in the beginning, inspire us to get in shape, get motivated, get in shape. I think that, the hardest thing to do is just get started, get out the door, put your sneakers on, find something you enjoy. But like, if once you take that first step, and just even with running, just once you get out the door and start running, after a mile, your body warms up, it feels good. You will never regret it. You will always come back feeling better. And what it does for you, really so much more than physically, but mentally, to give yourself that time and space and freedom and energy that you need, like it's worth it. Do it for yourself, do it for your family, do it for your, soul. Like move your body, and exercise is not a punishment. It's a celebration of your body. It's a celebration of the miracle that our body is. Move your body in a way that you love and makes you feel good. Find exercise that you love. And feel free really to reach out to me with any questions. I always tell everyone I'm cheering you on with whatever goal you have for yourself. I want to be there for you.
Okay. Yeah, I also know you support the Best Daniela.
Beatie Daniela, yes.
Best Daniela, right. If you want to just tell us briefly what that is, and I know you run for them as well.
Yes, I would be so grateful to share with you. Beatie Daniela was founded in memory of my 14-year-old cousin who struggled with anorexia and unfortunately did not make it. And her mother wanted to create what she felt was missing in her daughter's treatment plan, was basically a rehabilitative program for kids coming out of the hospital who have been struggling with mental health issues to help them transition into their everyday lives. And Beatie Daniela offers dog therapy, horse therapy, all their school needs, group support, social support for the parents. It's a day program, so they don't sleep there, but it's like basically that transition from when you come out. The kids who come into Beatie Daniela are at the lowest point in their life. They don't feel good about themselves. And Beatie Daniela gives them a chance. It's empowering. It gives them a chance to find their strengths, to feel good, to feel like themselves again. And I've seen amazing things. They are saving lives daily. It's on a beautiful ranch in Tzor Hadassah. And unfortunately, because the Jerusalem Marathon was canceled twice, 2 years in a row because of Corona, we haven't been able to do our normal fundraiser. So if anyone feels in their heart they want to donate to this really amazing cause, I'll put a link in my bio. I can share a link. Donations are always welcome. And my aunt is just a role model to me of someone who, she didn't take the most tragic event happened to her. She could just remain sad for the rest of her life. And literally a month after her daughter passed away, all she was thinking about was like, how can I turn this into something positive? And she did that. And she inspires me every day to, go through hard times with strength and love and joy and find the good in everything.
Thank you. Like I said before, you obviously come from a very good family. We know that. So you should continue doing things for good, for smachot we should have. And again, was it beitdaniela.com for people who want to?
I don't know if that.
Actually, somebody wanted to know how do they contact you? What's the best?
Someone asked if they give out my email. I don't mind giving out my email, but I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to answer. Since I don't work in my regular job anymore, I am not bound to my emails. And Rabbi Kalman can attest, I am very slow in responding to emails.
Okay, it's all the tova, so that's okay.
I can write my email. I'm just saying, like, there's no guarantees.
That's great. Okay, so we want to thank you again for this amazing journey that you've shared with us. I hope that we'll be able to host you on live at some point soon as well on behalf of Kedma, JIC Israel, Alinu, the L'Chaim Center in Chicago. We want to thank you, and also want to thank Talia Krief and Stacy Sloan for doing a lot of work to help get this event as well. And thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We're going to probably take a little break and through Pesach, although our next speaker is going to be also somebody who fought for Shabbos, and that's David Schoen, who is the attorney for the past president in the impeachment trial. He's going to be speaking for us and talking about his journey and keeping, and like exactly what you're doing right now, that Shabbos is paramount for us, even if you have to give up being on the biggest stage, whether it's in the Senate impeachment trial or whether it's on the Olympic. You're really an inspiration to us, and you should go Mechayel, Chayel, well daven for you, and in 6 weeks, and we look forward to cheering you on in Tokyo and beyond and everywhere else. So we should continue to be a Kiddush Hashem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and everyone should have a Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know it's not Pesach yet. Don't worry. Don't get stressed out by those words. But just keep it up. Thank you very much.